Okay, today's daf is Yud Gimel 13, and we begin on 12b, the Mishnah towards the bottom. And we continue to discuss the rules about doing business with idol worshippers around a idol worshiping holiday. Um, a city which has Avodah Zarah in it seems to mean a holiday of idolatry. And there were some stores that had their Christmas decorations up and some that did not. I'm being facetious, obviously, about Christmas, um, but in a modern context,
Why, why,
without
why,
comment on
why
whether
facetious?
Christianity is Avodah Zarah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so I was in Jerusalem around Christmas a few years ago. I could
Yeah.
not believe how many Christmas decorations there were.
Okay. Um, anyway, so some stores have and some do not. So clearly the decoration indicates participation in the holiday. Zaya Masim Beis Shan. This actually happened in Beit Shan. V'amru Chachamim, and the rabbi said, Hamutaros Asuros. You can't do business. You can't. Well, we'll see exactly what it means, but you can't do business with the decorated stores. V'shein Mutaros Mutaros. But stores that are not decorated, you can do business. So, of course, this goes seems to go against the original mission in this parak, in this masechta, which is like you can't do business at all with Avodah Zarah people. So we'll see what the distinction might be. Um, um, Rashi comments, She'ena mutaros, those that aren't decorated, you can do business. Dibaos and she'en mutaros lo shakli minau michsa lavodos kochavim. What's the difference between the decorated ones and non-decorated ones? Whether they collect a tax for, a church tax. V'lo machia lavodos kochavim hanami now. So if you buy from them, none of your money is going to go to the idolatry. Um, okay. So, what does Gemara say about this? Amar Shimon ben Lachish Shanu el mutaros bevered v'hadas. What kind of decoration was he talking about? Roses or myrtles? Deka mishane merecha. Because why shouldn't you go into those shops? Not because they're doing business, but because you benefit from the nice smell. This reminds me of being in Yerushalayim on Pesach, and if you walk around especially the Arab parts, there's the Arab street vendors selling beglach. It smells so good. These are fresh out of the oven. The smell is amazing on Pesach. And I'm like, I really should not be enjoying this smell on Pesach.
Benefiting from hummus.
Yeah. Avamutaros beperos, but if they have some other decorations, like, sukkah decorations, fruits or whatever, those are not official. Mutaros, you're allowed. By Tama, why? Tamakra, v'lo yidbak b'yacham, because they have no scent to them, or not a distinct scent, not a strong scent. So you're just by going into the store was decorated with fruit, there's no benefit to you. And why is that a problem? The Amar Korah, lo yidbach b'yad chamum min acherem. About the Avodah Zarah, the Torah says you can't have anything from it. Nanahu de'asur. So it's like that means nanahu de'asur mehana shari. So you can't have benefit, but giving benefit is okay. Now, I mean, clearly there are restrictions on what you can provide to an idol. You can't offer a sacrifice to an idol, for example. But doing business with someone who's gonna, I don't know, donate to the church or something, that might not be a problem. So you can't accept benefit from the Avodah Zarah, but you can give benefits by buying things from him. Okay, which is significantly moderates our understanding until now of what the Mishnah was talking about. Originally, it seemed like the Mishnah was saying like, don't do business with them at all. Now we see that there are some details to that. Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Okay, so that was Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Afilu mutaros beperos namayaser. No, even if it's decorated just with fruit, you still can't go in. Kal v'chomer. Okay, so the Torah says don't get benefit from Avodah Zarah. So clearly you can't give benefit to an Avodah Zarah. That's even worse. Um, so Meisvei, so they ask a question on Reish Lakish. Rabbi Nosson Omer, Yom Shavuos Kochavim Manachas Boas Hamechas. The if the tax collector, the church tax collector, uh, foregoes the tax, if you get like a rebate or not a rebate, but abatement of the tax. Machrizin v'omrim. This is how they announce. Kol mishanot Torah. If you take a wreath of flowers or whatever, v'yanich barosho uverosh chamoro l'chval avodas kachavim, and you put it on your head and on your donkey's head to honor the avodah zarah. Yanich lo samechas. Then no tax. Vim lav. But if you're not going to wear the crown, the wreath, al yanich lo samechas, then you have to pay the tax. So if you're a Jew and you're there, what should you do? Should Yaniach, if you put the wreath on your head, Nimsanana, so you get benefit by not having tax, not being taxed. Lo Yaniach, or maybe you don't put it on Nimsa Mahana, then you give then you don't have to pay the tax, and you're giving benefit to the idol. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You're either going to get a benefit or give a benefit. Mikan Amr, so they said, Hanosi v'nosim b'shuk shel avodas kochavim. If you're doing business in the Avodah Zarah marketplace, behema teyaker. If you buy an animal there, it should be. We'll see what this means in a minute, but it turns out to mean he'll be hobbled. Peros b'ksus v'kelim, things that are perishable, including clothing and things that wear out. Vessels which wear out, or fruit which rots. Yirkavu, then they should be left to rot. Most and what about money or metal vessels that do not deteriorate? They'll deteriorate if you throw them into the Dead Sea. Vezuikor. So what do we mean by behema teaker? It should be literally means uprooted. Hamanasher persosea min harakuva ulamata. You cut the tendons below the knee. So you're hobbling it basically. So anyway, katani miyas. What do we see from this price? So yaniach nimsanana. So the beginning of this price is said you have this dilemma. Like if you put the wreath on your head, then you are getting the benefit of not being taxed. And not putting it on means you're giving benefit by paying the tax. But Reish Lakish said that Mahana Shari, that it's you can't take benefit, but you can give benefit. So how does he deal with this price? So which clearly seems to indicate that both are a problem, both giving and receiving benefit. Okay, so this was Rav Nassan's view, and Reish Lakish holds that there's another view that so in other words, Reish Lakish sides with the Rabbanan who argue with Rav Nassan, and that's how we get out of this. So yes, indeed, Rav Nassan has a different opinion, but Reish Lakish sides with the opposing opinion of the rabbis. Biana diamrei Rabbanan depligi elei. Reish Lakish. I don't accept. I believe that Mehana is mutar because I side with the rabbis against Rabbi Nosson. Rabbi Yochanan Savar lo plige. Rabbi Yochanan says that no, that Rav Nosson has his opinion. It's the only opinion that there is no other side. That indeed Nana and Mahana, getting benefit and giving benefit, are both forbidden. Velo plige. So velo plige. So the Gemara asks, is that right? So what so you're trying to tell me that according um, to Rabbi Yochanan, there's no dispute. But clearly that's not the case. Clearly there is a view that is against Rabbi Yochanan that we're going to see now. Latanya, here's a brisa. You can go to like a street market or a fair, an expo of the kochavim. You can buy animals, servants, batim, vesados, ukramim, real estate. And you can record these deeds in their title offices. Um, Why can you participate in the courts of in the legal system of the Kochavim? Usually, we say Jews have their own court system, and we should not participate in Avodah Kochavim courts. But here it's different. Because you have to, in order to exercise your rights. If you buy something and you can't back it up with title, then you're going to lose the property to somebody else that doesn't own it because they're going to say you never sold it. So since it's the only way to protect your interests, you have to go through the title office. But if you're a Kohen, mitami b'chutz la'aretz ladun la'arimim. You can even go, even in chutz la'aretz, you can even go to, you can even go to a place where you would become tamei in order to state your claim, to stake your claim. Like if you have to basically walk over graves to get into the courthouse, then you can do that, even if you're a Kohen. Ukashem, well, we're going to qualify that. That's not quite right, but that's what it sounds like now. Ukashem shemetame b'chutz la'aretz, and just as you can make yourself tame as a Kohen in chutz la'aretz for this, kach matame b'beis hakvaros. You can, you can, you can do that with a cemetery, right? You can go through a cemetery if necessary to enforce your claim. So, like the Tumas Eretz Amim is not. There's no like direct evidence of graves, right? Of the presence of dead bodies. It's just that there's the rabbis treat all of Chutz La'aretz as a place where Kohen becomes Tameh because we don't keep track of where the grave sites are, where the cemeteries are. Um, but so even a known cemetery, a Kohen can violate the Tuma rule to enforce his rights. So the Gemara says, "Wait a minute, Vesak Faras Kadata. What you're telling me? A Kohen can really go into an actual cemetery? Tuma Doraisa? This is like it's a Doraisa. So don't tell me that you can transgress a clear biblical transgression in order to enforce your monetary rights. That doesn't sound right. Ella Beis Hapras Darabanan. We're not talking about an actual known cemetery. We're talking about a Beis Hapras, which is a place where there was a cemetery. It was plowed under, and now you don't know exactly, where the graves were in this field. So that's a drabana. So since there's no daraisa because you don't know for sure that this is the place of where there's a dead body, but the rabbinically it's not good, and then the rabbis basically gave you a pass if you're protecting you need to go to court to protect your interests. Umitame lilmo Torah v'lisaisha. And the Brisa continues, you can also become tame in order to learn Torah or to get married. In other words, if you're a Kohen and you have to go outside Eretz Yisrael and become tame that way, or through a base of press, in order to get to the yeshiva or to court or to get married, you can do that too. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Masai, when is this okay? Bizman she'ein mosei lilmod. That's only if the only place you can find to learn Torah is in Chutz La'aretz. There's no good yeshivas, no yeshivas in Israel that you can study in. But if you can find a yeshiva in Israel, or you can find a wife in Israel, Eino Matame, then you can't go to Chutz La'aretz and become Tame that way. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Afil Bizman Shemosi Lumod Yitamad. Rabbi Yossi says, no, even if there's yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael, you can still go to Chutz La'aretz if that's a better place for you. Lefi She'ein Adam Zocha Lumod Mikol, because people aren't always successful in studying Torah. You have to find the right fit, the right teacher, the right environment. So if you can't find that in Israel, or if you really think that you have a better shot in Chutz La'aretz at this particular place in Chutz La'aretz, then you can go there. Amar Yossi, Masi Yosef the Kohen. There was this guy Yosef the Kohen. Shahalach achar Rabban Lutzidon Lumo Torah. That he followed his teacher to Tyre. So this is an example of that, or a case study of that. Anyway, okay, so we have this whole brisa, but the point is, this brisa explicitly said you can buy things in the Yurid Shel the Kochavim in the fair. And so even though it's a yerid of it of Avodas Kochavim, which we take to mean that the profits, or at least a tax from it, goes to the idol worship. So doesn't that contradict Rav Nassan? And so here we clearly, so we wanted to say that Rabbi Yochanan holds, and no one argues with Rav Nassan, but here is a brisa that clearly argues with Rav Nassan. V'yomer Rabbi Yochanan, and not only do we have this brisa, but we have Rabbi Yochanan who acknowledged this brisa because he said halacha Rabbi Yossi. He said about this brisa that he actually commented on it and said halacha was like Rabbi Yossi alma plige. So we see that there is a brisa where the rabbis do argue. So why is Rabbi Yochanan saying that it's fine to that it's usher for both to be nana and mahana, where this brisa clearly indicates a source where it's okay to be mahana. Rabbi Yochanan, that's really olam lo flige. Now, really, there's no argument between the Rav Nassan and the Rabban of lo kasha, but there's no contradiction from this brisa. Kan in the brisa where Rav Nassan says no, that you can't either, neither nana or mahana is allowed. Then we're talking about like an established store, a someone who, for from a retailer, basically, to shakle michsa mine, because he's going to have tax collected. So then that's a problem, because money is going to Avodah Zarah. But yeah, the brisa which says it's okay to buy things from this pagan fair. V'lokech mibal bayis. We're talking about like street vendors, or flea market kind of thing, where lo shachli michsamine, there's no established store and there's no tax collected, so that's why it's okay to buy from them. Amar Behemot Yakar. We also said earlier that if you buy an animal from Avodas Kochavim, you have to hobble it. Aren't you causing pain to the animal? Amar Bai, Rachmana es Susehem Te'aker. This was explicitly permitted in Yehoshua, where God basically commanded Yehoshua to the captured horses from the Canaanites were to be hobbled. So clearly, hobbling is not really a problem for us. Amar, we also said earlier, Ezu Ikur Menasher Parsosea Min Harakuba Ulamata. We defined Ikur as hobbling. Reminu. I have a question on this. Ein Makdishim in Machrim in Marichim Bizman Hazeh. You can't make something hektish in any of these ways in current times without the Beis Hamikdash. V'im hikdish v'hachrim v'harik, because there's nowhere to give it. V'im hikdish v'hachrim v'harik, but if you went ahead and did so anyway, then behemat te'akar, you should hobble the animal. Peros kasus v'kelim yirkavu, like we said before, if it's clay or clothing or clay vessels, they should be left to decompose. And most uklei matechos, or money, metal coins or metal utensils, yolichem miyam melch, you just throw them in the sea. Vezi ikur, and what is ikur? Noel delos b'faneh v'himeisamei eleha. Here we have a different definition of ikur, of uprooting. You basically lock it up and let it starve to death. So which is it? Why in one case do we say let it starve and the other say hobble it in order to kind of make it to nullify the benefit that you're getting? In the case where you make something hektish that you shouldn't have made hektish, then we have a problem. You can't put a mum in it because it's hektish, right? Even though there's no Beis Hamikdash, but still you have to treat hektish with more respect. And so then just locking it away is a better option. V'nishchate mishchat. Okay, so fine. You can't disable it, right? You can't treat it disrespectfully by disabling. Why don't you just slaughter it? Asubu lidei takol, where it says, because clearly there's no, I mean, Hektish itself is slaughtered right on the Mizbeach. So the act of slaughtering is not denigrating the animal. Although one could quibble with that, but let's just take that at face value. But the problem is, if you do shechita properly, then people might think, oh, this is kosher meat, but really it's hektish, and you can't benefit from it. Belishve gistra. So why don't you just kill it not with shechita? Basically, just cut its head off. in a way that doesn't make it kosher. Amar Abaye, Amar Krav, Nitasem is mizbechoseim, lo tasim kein l'Hashem Elokechem. By destroying it, by actively destroying it, that would be something that you should do to Avodah Zarah. But lo tasim kein l'Hashem Elokechem. Don't do that to your God, right? Don't do that to your hekdesh. In other words, you need to disable it, fine, but cutting it in half like you would do with Avodah Zarah, you can't do that either. So the only thing that's left to do is to lock it away and let it starve. Rav Amar, Mipnei Shanira. Okay, so now, yeah, okay, and Rav Amar. Rav has a different answer. Mipnei Shanira Kametil Mum B'Kachim. Why can't you? It's not because of disrespecting Hektish. It's because of a specific type of disrespect, if you will. You're not allowed to deliberately make a blemish in Hektish, something that makes it possible. So that's why you can't just hobble it, because that would be putting a blemish in it, and after all, it's still hektish, even though you can't bring it to the mizbeach because there's no mizbeach, there's no beis hamikdash. Still, you can't put a mum in it. So Gemara says, "Nira, what you think this is? That doesn't make sense." You say it appears like a blemish. It's actually a mum al. This is a legit blemish, right? Don't tell me it looks like something. Gemara answers, "Hanamilei bizman beis hamikdash kayim." The not actually making a mum is only a problem when the base of Mikdash is around. After the base of Mikdash is destroyed, so you're not. I wouldn't call this making a mum, because as it is, there's no a possibility of having this used by Hektish. So we call it nira. It's like it looks like you're doing a mum to an animal. So honeymoon was basically the chazil akrava. You could, if during the base of mikdash, you could have sacrificed it on the mizbeach, and so you can't make a mum in it. Hashel chazil akrava. Now, and nowadays, when there's no possibility of offering it as a sacrifice on the mizbeach, leislam ba, you have no problem with making a mum. But it appears so you're actually making a mum, but it appears to be like a violation. So in other words, it's not really a violation because you're allowed to make a mum if there's no mizbeach. But it doesn't look right. Like it looks like it's the same action, it's the same result. So it's a bad habit. Um, Veleve kamatum mum bevalmum. So wait a minute. So you're saying that really it's allowed, but we're just not letting you do it because it doesn't look good. But really, it shouldn't be allowed um, because if you have an animal that already has a mum, are you allowed to make another mum in it? Usher, even though it already has a mum and it can't be sacrificed, which you would think is like there's no mizbeach, so it can't be sacrificed. You're still not allowed to make a mum in it. Right? So why isn't it the same case where the animal already has a mum is not a zeh? My answer is bal mum nehidul chazi legufe. Okay, so an animal that already has a mum. So all right, I grant you that lo chazi legufe. It can't be sacrificed. Ladame chazi, but okay, so if this animal is hektish, it still has hektish value. It can still be sold, and the money can be used for another sacrifice, right, or for something to do with hektish. Lapuke hacha, but in the case of bisman hazeh, lo ladame chazi, lo legufe chazi. You can't do anything with hektish. You can't sell. If you sell it, you still have nothing to do with the money because there's no use for hektish. So therefore, it would be allowed to make a mum in it, but it just doesn't look good. Okay. Ashkeche Rabbi Yonah Rabbi Eli Dekaya Pischa Detzar. Rabbi Yonah saw Rabbi Eli. He was at the gates of Tyre. Amarle said, "Katane behemat yakar." The price said an animal that you buy at this idolatrous fair should be uprooted, and we had understood that to mean you hobble it. Eved mai. What about a slave? Right? Do you do the same thing to a slave? Do you disable the person? Evan Yisrael Violin, and I'm not asking about a Jewish slave. Kika Mibaile Evelov Kachavim. I'm talking about a non-Jewish slave, a Canaanite slave. My, what about that? Amalei. So he answered him, Michael Baila from Mibaila. What are you asking? Tanya, we have a brisa. Ha'ovde Kachavim v'haroi behemataka lo malim v'lo maridin. If you have uh, non-Jews, idol worshippers, and shepherds of behemoth, of sheep or of small animals. Lo malin v'lo marin. You don't don't help them and don't injure them. Okay, um, so that would indicate that you cannot maim a Canaanite slave. Like you can leave him alone. You should leave him alone. You shouldn't, you shouldn't injure him. Just like maybe shouldn't heal him or you shouldn't give him benefit, but you also shouldn't injure him. So therefore, the rule would definitely be different than an animal. Amar le Zarah. Katane, the Brisa taught us, locally man of Behema of Adi Mushfachas. You can go to this idol worshiper fair and buy animals and buy servants. Um, and uh, and it also said real estate. Eved Yisrael is just talking about a Jewish slave, Filu Eved Kochavim, or maybe even a non-Jewish slave. um, the benefit of buying a Jewish slave is obviously you're putting him in a position where he can be a good Jew, right? Like you have to then he's in your household and he can behave as the Torah mandates. Whereas if he is the slave of an Ovid Kohavim, he probably doesn't have that opportunity. But what about an idol worshiper in the first place? Like, do you have license to buy him? There doesn't seem to be the same kind of benefit. Amalei answered, "Mistaber Israel." Makes sense that we're talking about what can you buy only a Jewish slave, because if you're talking about an idolatrous slave, Lamaim Vile, what benefit is there to the like why are we making these exceptions? What's the benefit in it for us? Kiyasa Ravin Amar Rishon ben Lachish, when Ravin came, he said, "Afilu Eved Oved Kachavim." No, you can even buy an idolatrous slave. Why? Because you're bringing him in a way into the Jewish community. Because in Ovid Kochavim, he got circumcised. He has the same responsibility for mitzvos as assigned to women. So you're kind of making him semi-Jewish, as it were. And so that's why we say, go ahead and buy him in the fair.
So that creates an interesting situation. There were a lot of Jewish slave owners in the South.
Mm-hmm.
So there ought to be a lot more black Jews than there are because eventually they were freed.
Uh-huh.
But almost all African Americans are Christian.
Ooh, good one.
I've heard of
Interesting.
Jews whose ancestors were freed by their Jewish slave owners, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't have control over the situation, right? They may have been freed, but nobody ever told them that now you're Jewish, right?
Yeah, our Jewish slave owners were not very observant.
Perhaps not. Yeah. Um, Amar Rashi. But Ravashi says, "Atu behema, my machnis tachos kanfei hashchina yika." Okay, that you're saying you can buy the non-Jewish slave because you're making them Jewish in a way. What about the animals? Why are you allowed to buy the animals? You're not making the animals Jewish. Ella mishum meutinu. The reason that you're allowed to buy the animals is because you are reducing the wealth or what's the word here? You're diminishing the what the idol worshippers have. In other words, the idol worshippers no longer have dominion over this animal. So it's the same with the slaves, right? It's like that's why you can also buy their slaves because you're diminishing their influence. So the same applies to the slaves. Rabbi Yaakov Zavan Sandla. Rabbi Yaakov bought sandals at one of these markets, idolatrous markets. Rabbi Yirmiyah Zavan Pita. Rabbi Yirmiyah bought pita, bought bread. Amrle Chadl Chavre Yasma Avad Rabba Chache. Yasma. Amrle Chadl Chavre. One of them said to the other, Yasma, like orphan, meaning not that you have no parents, but you have no good teachers. Avad Rabba Chache. Is this what your teacher did? Amrle Idach Yasma Avad Rabba Chache. So in other words, like they're holding different opinions. One holds that yes, you can buy bread but not shoes, and the other one is like, yeah, you can buy shoes but not bread. But both of them actually bought from non-professionals. Um, V'chol chad v'chad savar chavrai mitagar zavan. And each one thought that the other one bought from a merchant, right? So each one is saying like, this is not the difference between sandals and bread. It's the difference between, yeah, I bought mine from my next door neighbor, but you bought yours from a store where there's tax taken. And the other one thought the same of his fellow. Diamar Rav Abba Bere Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rav Abba um, said to Rabbi Chia, no, to Rabbi Abba said to Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Lo shanu el b'lokeach min hatagar. We're only talking about buying from a merchant. The shachlei michsa minei, because he's going to be taxed by the idolaters. Aval b'lokeach mival bais, but if you're buying from your neighbor, the lo shachlei minei michsa, that no taxes per night is collected mutar. That's okay. Amar Rabbi Abba B'rei Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Ilmale higher Rabbi Yochanan Hazim. Now, if Rabbi Yochanan were around, the Asra the Kashak le Mifsa Afil mi Balabayis Havasar. If he were in a place where even private individuals who sell things are taxed, um, he would have said you can't buy from those individuals either. Elainu hechesav, and so then how could Rabbi Yaakov have bought from individuals, from private individuals? The Gemara is assuming that there was a tax levied. No, so there's a difference. Like even though at the time of this incident, private individuals, like I don't know, non-professionals, I guess like maybe eBay sellers, right? They didn't have a storefront, but they sold regularly on eBay. They had to be taxed. But if I went to just my neighbor's house and bought, his garden tools, there wouldn't be tax for that. So even in the place where tax was collected from private individuals, it wasn't universal. It was only for established those who were established to be resellers, and if I just went to my neighbor who was not one of those people, there would be no tax collected. Okay, so we'll leave it here with this mission. But they would pick it up tomorrow.
Two interesting things. One is they they both the opinions seem to indicate that there's no problem with akum because they don't bring it up.
Oh, interesting. Right, the pizza that he's buying bread. Yes. Well, pasakum. Yeah.
We don't tend to pay attention to that these days, but
Mm-hmm.
the Chazal seem to be more concerned about. And the second is in a large number of U.S. states,
Mm-hmm.
many Canadian provinces, the state or provincial taxes directly subsidize Christian religious organizations.
Yes. Okay.
New York State, but in many other states. Um, and so, can one buy things in those areas? For instance, in Ontario, the the provincial government pays for Catholic schools, but not Jewish schools,
Mm.
unless it's changed. But that was
Yeah.
the uh,
Yeah,
um,
there's been certain inroads, but as generally, yeah. So there might be some support for Jewish schools now, but yeah, there was definitely a time where Jewish schools got no support.
yeah, in Maine and Vermont, by a Supreme Court order, the states are now required to support Catholic schools,
Uh-huh.
and there are no Jewish schools in either state.
Uh-huh.
So this would seem to be an issue.
Huh. Well, of course, then you have to define what is idolatry. So that's a whole other, that's a huge dodge, right?
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, these are all interesting things, but I think ultimately, it's like in this country anyway, we don't have any concerns about real idolatry and being supported by the government. Um, and also, like one could probably get around that by saying like your tax dollar is not entirely going to that. It's whatever, like everybody else. There's a percentage. I don't know.
Although in Well, in some places, there is a specific school tax that the Supreme Court has now ordered to be diverted in part to religious schools. In some places, Jewish schools benefit from that.
Hmm.
Anyway, Dr. Clark,
Okay. Good day.
all the best.